So I'm doing this video at my office, which is currently being remodeled. So bear with me if you hear extra voices or if you hear other things. I figured that this would be less of a distraction than 3 young kids running around my house while trying to do it. So let's get through it and hopefully all will be good. So by now that you have already received your articles and your video links. And so you're just like the students at this point. The students are going to receive these a week before the assignment so that they have time to go through them. And they're relatively short. They're not very long and they're easy to get through. They're easy reads. So these are things that are going to help the student kind of get in that mind frame a week before to think about what they want to do after they graduate high school. Now, most students have already put in for their FAFSA by this point. Given the TEKS, we go over the FAFSA early, but they do the FAFSA their junior year. So most students already have an idea if they're going to college or not. They've been thinking about this for a while. But this is kind of to give those undecided students more information on how do they want to do things. And depending on what choice they make, where is that going to lead them? How is that going to make their next couple of years? Is it going to make them easy, difficult? Years from now, is it going to be difficult? So this is kind of what this lesson is really set up to do, is to get students to think, hey, maybe I should rethink staying home, or maybe I should rethink going to at least a trade school. So this is really to set up the student to get them prepared for what they're going to want to do, and really to get them to take an honest look at what they want to do. So all these articles are what to do after high school. There's a video on that also. There is a video on living on minimum wage. And this guy that's talking about living on minimum wage, he also throws in the fact that he has a degree, but his degree is not an employable one. And that's something that students also have to think about when they're going to go to college. Is that degree, are they going to be able to find a job? And if they find a job, is it going to be one in that field that they spent so much money on? Because they're going to have student loans to pay off. There's also one on trade school. There's one on college, the pros for choosing a community college. There's an article over colleges now offering bachelor's degrees. So that's also another choice for those students who just want to do a trade, but they, nurses are starting to become employable only if they hold a bachelor's in nursing. So these colleges that are offering bachelor's in nursing, they're highly competitive, but they're cheaper. So this is an option for students to think about. And then there's the last article about renting versus buying, which is going to help them when they fill out their monthly budget. So you've seen the lesson plan, kind of how it's going to go. So there's that guided lesson. This is something that's important when we're doing this scaffolded lesson. So I will kind of reel them in by asking them, okay, well, what do you plan on doing after graduation as far as your career is concerned? Now, they've already had these readings and these videos to where they can come in and kind of already have an idea maybe of what they've been thinking. We can do a turn and talk if they, for whatever reason, maybe they don't feel comfortable coming out with that. So we can do a turn and talk and then have them come and answer the question to the class. So after that, I will be explaining this lesson pretty quickly and then going into the guided practice. So the guided practice is going to really help me get these students to understand how they're going to fill this out. And I'm actually going to do the guided practice for you, because looking at the worksheet, it might seem like there's a lot of directions and maybe this is very convoluted. So I'm going to show you that it's not. Actually, when you start working through it, it flows really well. And it helps students really see kind of what a choice, if they decided to start a family or if they decided to do a gap year, where that choice is also going to have to go, what else comes into play, like needing a job to pay for your bills. And maybe they realize, hey, maybe I should go to community trade school. Okay, well then now they're going to go over to that section and fill that out. So it does flow really well, and I'll walk you through that so you understand more of what I'm talking about here. But that's why it's so important for me to do the guided practice with the students. using basic personal information, as in when I graduated, I decided to start a family. And then I realized I had to have a job. So then I'll walk through those basic steps with them without going too in depth. So the independent practice will come after that. Once I run through it, then these students will be doing this part on their own with me walking around, telling them, okay, asking them questions, making sure they're staying on track, making sure that they're doing things correctly. Once they get through that independent practice, or once they get through the worksheet independent practice and filling out their budgets and stuff, that's when they will transition over to doing this on a PowerPoint. There are, as I've showed you, at the bottom of the document, there is the instructions for the PowerPoint, which help, depending on whatever track this student has taken, they can easily get through this. So everybody, no matter what their track is, has specific PowerPoint instructions on here. So they will be able to fill out their PowerPoint and then present it on that third day in class. Now, if for whatever reason a class is taking longer than the other classes, something unexpected happens, there's an assembly of sorts, this lesson could go into the fourth day for finishing up their presentations of their PowerPoints, and then a Kahoot afterwards to go over testing material to get them ready for the test on the next day. So because this unit takes a week to do with everything that it's covering, and you will have a test at the end of it, you could easily do this 3 days, fourth day exam, or fourth day the quiz, and then the fifth day the test. And then so if you need that extra time, you can just, usually quiz days, they're not fully filled. Students are catching up on their material anyways, so this really is a perfect assignment for that. So we're going to go ahead and now that you see kind of how the scaffolds, and of course you're going to be walking through this with your student. You are going to be providing encouragement as they're going through it. You're going to be providing higher level questions, and this kind of an assignment is great for higher level questioning, because students tend to think black and white when they think about their future. They're not necessarily thinking that one decision is going to be directly connected to many other decisions. And so this is a huge help for that. So now we will get into me walking through the worksheet with you on this board that I've already set up. So I will just be going through the questions and then answering them and kind of showing you how I would work through this, starting from the hardest point, which would be start a family, because it involves more. But of course, as you see, that if somebody chose to just start a family and say, hey, well, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom or dad, and my spouse is going to take care of the family and do the bills and stuff like that, that's not an easy out. They have other things that they're going to have to do so that they are doing a similar amount of work as somebody who takes this long track, or as somebody who goes community to university, that kind of thing. So they will also have extra work if you look at the prompts down the family line. So I've already implemented things in there for students who are looking to go the easy route. So we'll jump into me going through this board and explaining it to you. Okay, so I just went ahead and labeled these as questions. So we will start with, as numbered. I numbered some of the questions so that it could help me really explain to you where I'm at on the board. So the question is stay-at-home mom or dad, and the other question is working parent. So yes, at the time I got married, I was stay-at-home. So yes, stay-at-home mom or dad, and I am not a working parent at this point. So we're going to flip over to the next one, and it's going to say, how will bills be paid? So at the time, when I realized, hey, there's going to be bills that have to be paid, I decided that, I was going to have to go to work. So now I'm going to work. So since I'm going to work, I am going to have to, now I've got to fill out my monthly budget. So the students are just going to have to fill out a budget. They can ask their parents for information on the budget, or they can just Google what utilities cost and what the average household pays on a monthly budget. Just they can Google that for their city and state. So this isn't a really difficult, the budget is actually pretty simple. And the modifications that come to the budget are only going to happen when they go to community school to update their budget to accommodate for their student loans and university. Now, if they decide to start anywhere else on the board, and at some point they decide to start a family, well then at that point they will jump over to the family budget and they will accommodate for a family. So everything that they have filled out, they will just multiply by 2 to keep it simple. Okay, now you have to make this much in order to afford your family on the pay that you're making. So, but I decided to start with the family first. So I am starting with the family budget. That is the only budget I will be working with. So I am going to work, I'm going to fill out my budget. But now that I'm going to work, I'm going to have to fill out the entry-level job that I took. So at this point, it's going to prompt me to jump over to the entry-level job section. So it asked me what job. Well, I worked at Wendy's. Why did you choose this job? They were hiring. They were hiring, and that was about all I could get was a minimum wage job with the experience that I had possessed at that age. So now we're going to move over. Question 2 says, does this job offer room for advancement? Not really, but you could advance to maybe middle management to, a manager. So I'll put assistant, manager, and manager. So question 3, how much is starting pay? Well, starting pay at the time was $7.25. And how much is pay upon advancement? If I was to just get a regular raise, my raise would have been to maybe about $7.35. And if I was to move to management, that raise would have only been to about $10 an hour. Maybe let's say $10.25. So how many years of working does it take to be considered for advancement into management? For a minimum wage job, because people stay in management for so long, it's incredibly hard. So that would take at least maybe 5 years just to get on into some form of team leadership. But to get into a real form of management into a company like this, it would take me 10 plus years to see an actual move into management. Okay, so now it instructs me to go back to the family plan because that's where I started. So we'll answer question number 3. What type of entry-level job are you working? I'm just going to put minimum wage. Okay, do you plan to go back to school? At this point, yes. So, I do not plan to wait at this point I have a son, and I do not plan to wait for my son to get older before I go back to school, because that also imposes its own problems, like having to pay for your child to go to college while also paying for yourself to go to college. So for me, it made more sense to go to school when my first child was young so that I could at least get my associate's degree, because that's all I was planning on doing. So not waiting for kids to finish school, starting the educational track ASAP. So now I'm going to move over to community trade school. So the first question is, how do you plan to pay for your education? So for me, that was student loans and grants. Number 2, where do you plan to live while finishing up your degree? I was renting a house, so I'm going to live at my house. My budget is already accommodated for that, so I don't have to update that. Do you plan to do a 2-year degree, 4-year community college degree, or community college to university transfer? For me, I was only looking to do a 2-year degree. I just wanted to get a job that was going to get me out of the minimum wage sector. So go and get an associate's degree in liberal arts, and then just go and look for some secretary or job or position of some sort like that at the refineries where I lived in Corpus. So I was looking for something a little higher than this, but I wasn't necessarily looking to just completely jump into just an all-out 4-year education. So degree or certificate, it was a degree in liberal arts. Okay. Is there a high demand for this degree or certificate now? So it put me higher up in order to grab a job in this type of field, but it didn't necessarily mean that there was a demand for it. So not really. I'm just going to put, let's put yes and no. So yes, there was a demand for it, but it wasn't as big as I thought it would be. So we'll put that. So what about in the near future? No. An associate's degree in today's world is not going to get you anywhere as far as you think it will. In fact, trade school is probably going to get you further than an associate's degree. So no, my associate's degree didn't really have much for it in the near future at that time. So question 6 is, what is the average pay scale for the job you are going to school for in the area you plan to live in? In that area, the average pay for the job that I was looking for was going to be about $10 an hour. So I would update my budget for now, making the $10 an hour instead of the $7.25, which is going to go on the new salary line. And I would update the loans that are now going to be on my budget. So those things would now be updated. And I would move to question 7, which is, now that your budget is final, can you afford this basic budget on your new pay? If so, will you continue this career? So technically, yes, I could, because my husband worked. So we had 2 paychecks. But what if one of us lost a job? Would we be secure financially then? And the answer is no. So I'm going to say no. I think that it probably would be best to go to get a career that was more stable than what I had. So I'm going to now jump over to university. I've decided to go to a university, and I'm going to do it the same way: loans and grants. I am still, renting, and now this is going to take me, depending on how because I have to work through this now, 2 to 3 years to finish these last 2 years. And the reason that is because the longer you put off going back to school, the more responsibilities that you have. So I have children, and I have a job, and I have bills that have to be paid, and now I have school and everything else. So in order to fit all of those things in, it might take longer than the 2 years projected to finish. And it has. It's taken 2.5 years for me. So the question for number 3 was the degree. So we're going to put history, 7 through 12, education. Now we're going to move on to question 4. Is there a high demand for this degree now, and what about in the near future? So there is a demand for teaching. Now history teaching, there's a demand for teaching and for coaching at the same time. So you really have to make yourself more employable and up the things that you're educated in. So yes, there is a demand for history teaching, but eventually I'll have to go back to school and get my master's to make myself in more demand. And I will also have to go and get certified in other areas to make myself more employable, like special education and English as a second language. So I'm going to update my budget and now include the other loans that I'm going to take out. And of course, I will be here to help the students with the loans that they're going to take out. If they go to community school, it's just going to be based on how much does it cost to go to community school for a year. We're going to multiply that by 2, and that's what you're going to pay. We're not going to get all into the loans and the interest rates and things like that at this point. They've already gone through that earlier in the semester, so there's no need to go through this. We're going to make it simple, because what the point of this assignment is to really get them to thinking about the choices that they're making while they get ready for life after high school. So we're going to update this budget, and then we're going to update the new salary that we're going to make in this job that we're going for. So the average salary in Houston for a teacher is around $52,000 to $54,000 a year. So I'm just going to put, let's say $52K. And then we're going to go to question 5. Now that your budget is final, can you afford this budget on your pay? If so, will you continue this career? Now, on my pay, yes, I can afford my budget all on my own. So now if I, for whatever reason, wasn't working, my husband could afford it. If he, for whatever reason, wasn't working, I could afford it. This is a safe place to be as far as your budget is concerned, that no matter what life may throw at you, if one person is working in their career of choice, they can afford that budget that is set. So yes, I can afford it, and I'm great. So now that the budget is done, we have easily walked through this. It shouldn't take my students more than a day to really get through this. And by a day, I mean that first day that we get through this. When I walked through this took me about, let's see, my crammer says 23 minutes for me to walk through this. Now, in a 45-minute class, that means that my students have the ability for me to do a quick run through of what we're going to do, get through this, and then have about 15 minutes left of class time to really start on the track that they're going to take. They'll do the budget at home because they're going to ask their parents for it. And then when they come in that last day, they will be tying up any loose ends that they have. And then they will be doing their PowerPoint, which is completely laid out. So they don't have to worry about how am I going to put this information into a PowerPoint. It's already laid out for them. They are literally just putting in the puzzle pieces that I've asked for. And I think that this assignment is great too, because it is a personal assignment. Your students can sit in a group and kind of chat about how they're doing their assignment, but that it is an individual assignment, because it's important for your student to know who they want to be. This is personal. So I hope that y'all appreciate this assignment. If any of y'all maybe end up teaching economics, this is a great structured way to do the move out part of the assignment, because the problem with these big to-do move out assignments is you have to have, like, if you're going to bring in people to talk to them and try to get them to understand budgeting and stuff like that, you have to have about a week and a half time frame to do that. So this gives you the normal unit size week to really get them set up to do this assignment. So I hope that y'all like it. And it's a great way, like I said, to get them to understand their future. And when you're done with it all, the best thing that you can do is do an exit ticket. Ask them what they learned from this assignment. What were the things they took away from? Maybe they didn't realize how difficult it might be to run a budget, and that gives them new perspective on what their family is doing. Maybe they didn't realize that that if they didn't go to school of some sort right away, that it's going to be even harder later on in life. Maybe they realize that they want to go to a trade school, and that's a great thing. There's a really good video in there, about trade school being a great thing. If somebody just does not want to go to school for a long period of time anymore, a trade school is a great way to get a really highly employable skill and get out and immediately start making money. So it's not that any of the choices are bad. It's that we want them to be informed on the choices that they're making before they make them. So that's what this assignment is for. I'm glad that y'all have stuck with me this long to go through it. So sorry we can't see each other face to face, but I look forward to seeing y'all's videos. Bye.